LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Good evening and thank you for joining me on another exciting day in British political life. Conservative Party members, all 160,000 of them, have been receiving their ballot papers. They are, in this sense, each one 160,000th of the Queen, in that historically it was the Sovereign who chose the new Prime Minister, but now it's members of the Conservative Party. And just so you're not in any doubt, I can make it clear who I'm backing. I am backing Boris. I've been supporting him for some time. I think he is the right answer. I have a fantastic cardboard sign that I am showing to people watching on Facebook to show exactly what I'm doing. So I'm backing Boris, but there's a lot to talk about beyond my own personal views and to try and find out what callers would like to hear from the candidates. What haven't we discussed? We've had promises on defence and on police and on tax cuts. A whole range of issues have come up. And some people are saying, the One Nation group of Conservative MPs, they want more meat on the bones. They want more detail as to what people have said. And others have further suggestions, things that they think are important that haven't been covered. So I'm really keen to get your views. And we've also had today message from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who said that he's very determined to stop a no-deal Brexit. But the thing that puzzles me about this, Mr. Chancellor of the Exchequer, is how could you have signed up to the Conservative Party manifesto that said no deal was better than a bad deal if you are so determined to stop no deal that you would overturn the promise made to the British people that we would leave? I'm deeply puzzled by politicians who won't stick to the promises they gave. The British people have a right to expect the Conservative MPs stick to the Conservative Party manifesto, especially those who were ministers at the time the manifesto was launched, who were bound by collective responsibility to support it. And I think it's very peculiar that ministers who signed off on that manifesto are now trying to stop it, and it seems to me a raid on democracy, because people voted Conservative in the expectation that the leaders of the Tory party meant what they said. So, Mr. Chancellor, why don't you mean what you said in 2017? Let's get back to this issue of what's been promised and what can be delivered. I think it's really impressive that Boris Johnson has promised more police, because the Tory party's always been the party of law and order. I'm also pleased that he's promised tax cuts, because fundamentally Conservatives believe that it's our money, not government money. There's no such thing as government money, there's only taxpayers' money. And I'm delighted that he's not going to carry on with sugar taxes and things like that. Many of you will know that I'm the greatest admirer of nannies. I think nannies are wonderful, but I'm not in favour of the nanny state. So calls are coming in already. We've got David in Worksop. David, what is your thought? What do you want to hear from these candidates?
I do. What I want to hear about is animal welfare. Now, Jeremy Hunt has apparently said he wants another vote on fox hunting, which has lost him thousands of votes. I want Boris to talk about animal welfare. I want him to talk about the fact that if we leave the European Union, we can stop the transportation of live animals. I want him to talk about the badger cull that starts in September in Derbyshire and to show that he cares about animals. That's part of... I'll be voting for Boris anyway, but that is part of the things that people want to hear about.
Well, Boris has a very good track record on animal welfare, I think, and certainly you're right that we can ban live animal exports once we've left the European Union, and that could be as soon as the 1st of November. And as Foreign Secretary, he put a lot of effort into the illegal trading to stop it in wild animal parts, you know, the ivory and other trade in wild animals. He was a great advocate of limiting that, put it very powerfully. So I think he's very much on your side on that.
Yeah, I want him to talk about it more. He's fantastic. He's getting my vote anyway, but I want him to publicise it a little bit more, because what I don't think a lot of people who want us to remain the European don't realise is that we cannot stop, as you say, the transportation of live animals, which is horrendous. And that would be a great vote winner for Boris if he starts talking about it a little bit more.
OK, well, that's a very good point, and I'll make sure that gets passed back to the headquarters of the Boris Johnson operation, that there is concern on live animal exports. And as you rightly point out, it's something we couldn't do anything about within the European Union, but once we've left, it will come under our own control. Gordon, in Cheshire, what's your view? What do you want to hear from the candidates?
I'd like to hear more from the candidates, Jacob, say like the North West. I've been off work for a week or so, but in the time being, I've travelled around with a friend in some of the places in the North West, even Cheshire, which has seemed to have fallen foul of Labour councils, and even, say, like Winsford and the surrounding area under your Conservative MP, Antoinette Sambach, the degradation that they've let happen. Now, when I say like go around Townshend that have fallen, Wigan, places like that, the degradation, constant Labour councils and governments, but when people turn and say, oh, it's the Conservatives' fault, well, it isn't, because the last Labour government that we had put us into a massive debt, which was bigger than the Napoleonic War. It was a huge debt that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown left us behind with. I understand the austerity that we had to go through. I truly do. But it's now seems to me that the austerity has to kind of take a step back and get us out of the EU so that we don't have to pay this 39 billion to the EU. It's 61.7 million, I think, per constituency that we could get, such as the bus services in and out of Winsford, around that way, and going up to Warrington, are absolutely atrocious. And
so, Gordon, what you want to hear, just to clarify this, is how we would spend the 39 billion on doing things that are good for the United Kingdom, and especially in the area that you live in.
Exactly, the North West. It's absolutely, Jacob, honestly, I just wish that me and you could spend time together and you could come round with me and I could show you what Labour councils have done in the past and let these places go. I can understand that some people get quite irate and frustrated when we turn and say we should have more border controls, but when you see that people coming from different countries and they don't work and they turn the areas into absolute war zones and communities where they refuse to integrate, this is where we need sort of money spent. We need money spent on the Northwest of better infrastructure. There is some towns that don't even have a railway no more, but German companies like Arriva that run the bus service, and I should know it, I've travelled on enough of them, the buses are absolutely awful and you're choking to death in the winter because of the fumes out of them, and you complain and nothing's done. I want to see a better infrastructure.
OK, that's great, Gordon. Thank you so much. You want to hear about the nitty-gritty issues that we get out of leaving Europe and spending money. Thank you for that. Senior Skeptic tweets. I'm bit reluctant to read out anonymous tweets, but I'm going to accept Senior Skeptic. It could be Bill Cash, after all. Says, the one thing I want to hear from the two remaining Tory leadership contenders is that any MP who votes against the party's Brexit policy will have the whip withdrawn at the next resulting general election. And Chris says, what I want to hear from the two candidates is to stop HS2 and spend the money on regional projects. That's a bit like what Gordon was saying, in a way. Unfortunately, the Brexit party is the only place I will hear that. But let's go to Susan in Sheffield. Susan, what do you want to hear from the two candidates?
Oh, hi. Totally agree with the previous candidate. We need to stop giving money immediately to Europe, but that's not my point. I absolutely agree with that. We need to leave Europe as soon as possible. But I would like to hear a little bit more about clean air. And I don't think this should just be left in the hands of the Greens. It's a matter for everybody. If anybody walks past a school at pick-up or drop-off time, you see mothers walking along the street with babies in pushchairs, breathing in exhaust from people's cars who sit there and leave the engines running. I've actually knocked on car windows and said, excuse me, would you mind turning your engine off? Why? Well, because we're breathing in your exhaust. Well, what is there no law against it? There is actually a law against it.
Yes.
And it's not just that, buses grinding up hills, and exhaust coming out of cars.
And there's a big problem.
Mowers.
But the diesel engines have been the biggest problem, haven't they? That we know it was the diesel engines that Europe was promoting that have caused so much damage to air quality.
Turned to diesel because we were led to believe that it was cleaner.
That's right, and it wasn't.
People want to do the right thing. But if it could just be sort of explained that we need to turn our engines off, that would be a massive, massive difference, even in little shopping centres where, you know, people are going to shops and sit, people sat in the cars on the phone, eating a sandwich. Even twice I've knocked on police car windows and said, excuse me, you're sitting in the city centre, we're all walking past breathing
Susan,
in your
you're a very brave lady. Are you telling me you go up to the police and tell them how to behave themselves?
I said, you might find this funny, but do you know it's against the law to sit with your engine running? Well, we're told to do this. Now, listen, this
You're
is
fantastic. Why haven't you gone into... We need you in politics.
Listen to the answer. And this is once in Sheffield and once in Weston-super-Mare with my granddaughter.
Oh, yes, that's near me in Somerset, yes.
Listen, they actually said, we didn't know it was against the law. I said, well, it is against the law. They said, well, we've been told to do it because we've been told we shouldn't sit in our offices as much, we should sit in our cars to do our work, our paperwork, but to do that we need to have our engines running. So,
Susan,
example,
we need more people like you who have the gumption, who even tell the police how to behave. Who guards the guards themselves? Susan, thank you so much for calling. That's a great call. Lynn texts, what I want the leadership candidates to do is to commit to the recommendations of the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee on Social Care, published this week. This is a major scandal and crisis, and I'm very sympathetic to that. I actually did the forward to a report by Policy Exchange, written by Warwick Lightfoot, that came to very similar conclusions to the Lords Economic Affairs Committee, and I think it's an issue where we need government action. But that may be a discussion we should have on another occasion, in another week, because it's 6:15. You're listening to Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC, and it's time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
The Old Bailey has found Tommy Robinson guilty of contempt of court for filming defendants in a trial and live streaming it. He now faces a prison sentence. An aspiring lawyer is starting a 10-year prison sentence after convincing more than 150 children to perform indecent acts on the internet. Former journalist and racing pundit John McCririck has died at the age of 79. LBC weather, dry this evening and overnight, a low of 13 degrees.
This is LBC.
My mum can't remember my first steps. She can't remember walking me to my first day at school or watching me walk down the aisle. She doesn't even remember I'm her daughter. But I do. That's why I'm walking the Alzheimer's Society Memory Walk for my mum. Join me to help defeat dementia. Sign up at memorywalk.org.uk. Who will you walk for? memorywalk.org.uk.
LBC.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo, company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
So, Sean, you did that landscaping job last week, but you haven't been paid yet. Well, that's out of order. 8 hours pushing a lawnmower in perfectly straight lines. 2 days spent giving a tree a haircut. Why hang about? With QuickBooks, you can send invoices on the go and automatically keep track of what's been paid, or not, all in an instant. Doing accounts the old way? It's crazier than that paving.
QuickBooks, backing you. Visit quickbooks.co.uk to get started.
Renewing your tax credits is too important to forget, so here's an unforgettable reminder.
Don't forget to renew your tax credits. It's very, very, very important.
Renew your tax credits by the 31st of July, or your payments will stop. Go to gov.uk/manage your tax credits today.
Don't miss out on Vodafone's double data deal. That's double data on all pay monthly smartphones. Yes, all pay monthly smartphones. Now a huge 30 gig for the price of 15, starting at only £30 a month. Double the selfie sharing, double the playlist pumping, and double the maps mapping. To get double data, go online or in-store today. Hurry, offer ends 9th of July. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Terms and details at vodafone.co.uk/summer.
You can complain free to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman about missold PPI. Alternatively, if you haven't got the time or the inclination, then just get the claims guys to manage the claims process for you. With the August 29th deadline approaching, time's at a premium anyway. So if you can't find your paperwork or you're not even sure you have PPI, it's definitely time to make a decision and start your PPI claim before it's too late. Text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
This is LBC with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Well, welcome back and thank you for listening. We're discussing the leadership of the Conservative Party again and the one thing you might like to hear from either of the candidates. But just a reminder, in case you haven't been listening earlier, I am backing Boris. I've got this great banner placard to say that I'm fully behind him, but I'm very happy to hear from people who are supporting Jeremy Hunt as well. We're a very Catholic show in that respect. We've had lots of texts coming in. Marcus makes an interesting point. He says, I'm a Conservative Party member, and what I would like to hear about is what the candidates can do to make sure that the work of the Boundary Commission is finalised before any general election. I believe it is the case that all constituencies need to have roughly the same amount of people, but at present the system is unfairly weighted in favour of the Labour Party. But let's go to Deborah in Stockport. Deborah, what do you want to hear from the candidates?
I would like to hear something about global heating and the crisis that we are facing as a species, but the whole planet is facing. As far as I'm concerned, nothing else matters other than global heating. James Anderson, a Harvard professor, who was the person that actually discovered the connection between CFCs and the ozone layer, has said recently that we've got 5 years to do something about global warming. And if we don't, we're facing a massive change to our lives. We're facing a breakdown of society. We are facing a rise of fascism as a result of that, and extinction of our species eventually. And I'm 57 years old, and that's going to happen in my lifetime, and certainly in the lifetime of my daughter, who's 25. I've heard nothing about that from either of the candidates. Boris, who you support, tells us at one point that he was prepared to lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop the third runway at Heathrow, and now he's completely against that.
I don't think he's completely against that, actually. I don't think that's what he said.
Well, what we've got to do is we've got to stop the expansion of any airport, including the one near me, which is Manchester. Growth, as we regard growth at the moment, has to stop, and growth has to be now sort of based in climate jobs and changing over our industry to actually produce wind turbines. We've got to produce solar panels, etc. Your government has reduced subsidies on solar panels and has now increased the VAT on solar.
Well, that came from the European Union, so we'll be out of the European Union. Yes, it did.
But I am a Remainer, a strong Remainer, and I am terrified to the point of having sleepless nights about what's going to happen.
Well, the photovoltaic cells were made more expensive by the European Union. It held back the development of solar power because it wanted to protect inefficient German industry. So I don't think the European Union's ever been the answer to this, and I don't think any politician can stand for election saying he wants to lower people's standard of living. We've got to find technological solutions to climate issues that can increase people's standard of living, because that must be one of the major objectives of any politician. So anyway, Deborah, thank you very much for your call. Let's go to Ada in Kingston. Hello.
Hi, Jacob. Good evening.
Evening.
My question is about Article 50 extension. If Parliament passes legislation as they have done before to extend Article 50, what the candidate will do? Are they going to write for the EU and ask for extension? And if the EU accept that extension, will there be a difficult Prime Minister to veto the budget and veto any treaty until Brexit is done?
Well, I think, this isn't really the question for this evening, because what we're asking is what you want to hear from the candidates. But Boris has been clear that we will leave on the 31st of October, come what may, whereas Jeremy Hunt said that it would be political suicide to leave if we didn't have a deal. So they've got differing views on the importance of the 31st of October. But the key there in terms of any legislation is that it takes two to tango. The UK can only ask for an extension, so Parliament can't demand an extension. It can suggest a Prime Minister asks for one, but that's quite difficult law, and the Cooper-Bowles-Letwin bill was fundamentally ineffective when that was passed earlier.
Okay, and will the candidate, for example, Boris, because I voted for him, is he going to make sure that we are going to be ready by October to avoid Parliament to revoke Article 50? If, for example, the EU reject or refuse the extension, the Parliament might revoke Article 50 because they will say we are not ready.
I don't think Parliament will revoke Article 50. It'd be such a kick in the teeth to the 17.4 million people who voted to leave. And bear in mind, over 400 parliamentary seats had a majority for leave in the referendum. So I think it's very unlikely. But I'm glad to hear you voted for Boris. You're ahead of me. I filled out the ballot paper, but I haven't yet been past the post box. I haven't yet had the chance to post it, but I'll be sending it off later today. Let's go to Terry in Orpington. Terry, what do you want to hear from the candidates?
Oh, hello, Jacob.
Hello.
Yes, what I'd like to hear from the two candidates, not just the two candidates, but all politicians everywhere, is talking about the probation service. The probation service, the key player, the key agency in the criminal justice system. We hear such a lot about police and prisons all the time.
Do you work in the probation service?
I did.
Right.
I took early retirement a few years ago when it was privatised because I knew it was going to be a complete disaster, which it has been.
And what do you want the candidates? What do you want the candidates to say about the probation service? What policy are you promoting?
Rather than putting extra resources into police, the police do need extra resources, and so do the prisons. But the probation service always gets overlooked. And they are the agency that actually turns people's lives around and stops them from reoffending, because they're primarily about rehabilitation.
Yes.
Police catch people, put them in prison. The prisons punish people, but it's the probation service that turn people's lives around. And the more successful probation is, the safer we all are in our homes. The communities are safer because there's less criminals out there. So you need less police. And
so what's the key change you would make to probation to improve it? Did you like to hear one of the candidates
even before
mention?
the probation service was privatised a few years ago, when Chris Grayling was Justice Minister, unfortunately the Lib Dems got on board with it. It only very narrowly got through in the Commons and the Lords to privatise it. Only the Labour Party opposed it. But even then, before it was privatised, probation officers had ridiculous caseloads, but absolutely swamped with work.
So you need more probation officers, is your argument?
You need more frontline staff.
Yeah.
Because how can you effectively rehabilitate people if you've got caseloads of 50, 60? You need a sensible.
Well, Terry,
caseload.
I think that's a really important point you've made, that we need to hear about probation and the belief that everybody can be rehabilitated, or almost everybody, and that society ought to try to do that. Thank you very much for your call. We've had a text from Christine who says, I would like to hear more about both candidates' position on the loan charge. Retrospective taxation, in my opinion, a breach to citizens' rights by the government. Christine, I'm extremely sympathetic to your view on the loan charge. I think the people who are at fault are the people who sold these products, not the people who took them out, who did so in good faith. So thank you for that thought. Let's go to Darryl in Newcastle. Darryl, what do you want to hear from the candidates?
Hello there, Jacob. Lovely to speak to you. So first, I would like Boris to say we're having a clean Brexit. We're not paying the $39 billion. We're going to have low taxes with low regulation, and we're going to be the new China. We're going to have massive booming industries as well as financial services. And let's
Darryl,
be one of the richest countries in the world.
You sound like Boris's speechwriter, because that's pretty much what he said, I think. Are you very close to the Boris campaign?
I'm an ardent Brexiteer, Jacob. I want to be a powerful country like we once were, and I want our GDP to be at least 6% growing every year, a bit like Mr. President Donald Trump.
Yeah, and you believe we can do that by cutting taxes, not paying $39 billion to the European Union, and an element of deregulation. Is that right?
I think regulations is what has stunted our growth for the past 20 years.
Yeah, I think we've had over-regulation, overzealous regulation, and over-enforcement of petty regulations, which has held business back. And it's really important that we make the right conditions for small businesses to flourish.
Businesses go to other countries because we're not an attractive market to have your business based in. That is why.
Well, Darryl, I have a lot of agreement with what you're saying. Thank you very much for calling and for some clear suggestions. Howard, what's your clear suggestion of what you'd like to hear? Howard in Hastings, in Amber Rudd's constituency.
Jacob.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Hello, Jacob. It's nice to speak to you. First time.
Thanks for calling.
I think it would be interesting to hear politicians talking about innovative and technical solutions to problems. There's been several calls about the airports and the controversy of whether we should expand them or not. And I get fed up with hearing people coming down on one of two sides. Either we should halt all airport expansion, which I think is unrealistic, or they trump the other view, which is we should just expand. Whereas I think it'd be interesting if we considered other means of flight. I'm amazed airships don't get talked about more, because you're looking at a green way of flight there for leisure, and you could still use the conventional planes for freight. And there are also other technological solutions as well, which could be used in planes, such as the use of prop planes in certain flights, and battery technology as well, which wouldn't require the jet engine. There's all sorts of things, but these don't often get discussed. And to hear a politician actually being innovative and looking to the 2020s and the 2030s would be really, really, that'd be a vote winner for me.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think we need to, as politicians, ensure people's standard of living can improve, but we also need to protect the environment, and the best way to do that is through technological solutions. I don't claim I know what all of them are, and you've had some very interesting ideas, but that's, I think, the route we need to go down. So, Howard, thank you very much for your call. You're listening to Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC. It's 6:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysakos.
Tommy Robinson faces a prison sentence after being found in contempt of court at the Old Bailey. The 36-year-old founder of the English Defence League, whose birth name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, breached reporting restrictions on a trial last year by live streaming outside Leeds Crown Court. A gang behind the UK's largest ever modern slavery ring have been jailed following a 3-year investigation. Operating in the West Midlands, they forced more than 400 people from Poland to work for as little as 50 pence a day. The Unite Union says it's a fantastic boost to the car industry. The Jaguar Land Rover is to build 3 all-electric cars in the West Midlands. Its 9th generation XJ model will be made in Castle Bromwich, with a new sub-brand Road Rover also planned. LBC weather, dry this evening and overnight, a low of 13 degrees. Tomorrow, sunny spells, a high of 22 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. It's very slow on the M1 northbound. A lane's closed because of a police investigation from junction 10 for Luton Airport to junction 11 for Dunstable South. There were delays on the M25 anti-clockwise because the car's broken down. That's between junction 26 for Waltham Abbey and junction 25 for Enfield, so one lane is closed. There were queues on the M23 northbound after a car broke down in the roadworks earlier from junction 9 for Gatwick Airport to the M25. There were queues in Chessington. The A243 Leatherhead Road is closed northbound because of a fire in a shop before Hook Road. And the A40 Western Avenue stays partly blocked out of town at the Swakeleys roundabout because of an accident. It means there are queues from Hanger Lane.
Here on LBC, Majid Nawaz, every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 12.
This blindness, this desire to score political points over human life. I don't give a damn. And whether there's a Labour mayor in charge when that happens, a Tory mayor, a Lib Dem mayor, or an alien, we've got to stop being party political about this and actually focus on the problem, Mark. It might not be trendy, but I don't care, because that's the definition of keeping it real.
Leading Britain's conversation, Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo. Company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with the big bad wolf. called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Meg, the driving instructor, is definitely almost 90% sure she's filing her VAT right. Kinda. But she'd be more confident with QuickBooks. QuickBooks is perfect for making tax digital and is HMRC recognised. Get up to 50% off your first 6 months. And maybe put it towards a new clutch.
Making tax digital means monthly VAT returns are changing too. Are you ready for the 7th of July? Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. QuickBooks, backing you.
Right now, you can choose tech worth up to £179 when you get BT Superfast Fibre. Play those summer tunes on a new Amazon Echo. Keep them to yourself with a pair of JBL 650 noise-cancelling headphones. Or get out and about with a Fitbit Charge 3. From $31.99 a month on an 18-month contract with a $29.99 setup fee. This offer ends the 11th of July. Search BT Broadband. BT. Be there.
New customers CPI increase each March starting 2020. 91% UK coverage. $44.49 per month. 19 pay direct debit. Terms apply.
Don't miss out on Vodafone's double data deal. That's double data on all pay monthly smartphones. Yes, all pay monthly smartphones. Now a huge 30 gig for the price of 15, starting at only £30 a month. Double the selfie sharing, double the playlist pumping, and double the maps mapping. To get double data, go online or in-store today. Hurry, offer ends 9th of July. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Terms and details at vodafone.co.uk/summer.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it to you, but maybe not Mum and Dad. I don't think they'll be able to do that. Really? I think Mum will help us. I spoke to her about it before. Really? What does she say? I just think she will help us if she can at the time. If she can, though? Yeah. I don't know. Getting onto the property ladder seems like a million miles away.
It isn't easy talking to your family about money, but it is important. The M word from Lloyds Bank. It's good to talk about money.
Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, welcome back. One of the important stories in the news this evening has been that Tommy Robinson has been found guilty of contempt of court and will be sentenced later. Contempt of court sounds a rather old-fashioned, archaic law, but actually it's really important that people shouldn't stop justice being done by interfering in cases whilst they're midway through, that it protects the rights of all of us who are innocent until proved guilty, and people who wantonly interfere with court cases deserve to be found guilty of contempt of court. It doesn't stop free speech. You can comment on the case once it's completed, and you can comment on things before legal action begins. But during the court case, let justice be done. Anyway, we're talking about what the candidates should offer, which they haven't, what one thing people want. And we've got lots of ideas coming in. The LBC listeners are leading Britain's conversation thoroughly this evening. They're the ones ahead of everybody else. I think the BBC must be so jealous of what we're coming up with. Isaac texts, I'd like to see more talk around the future of the financial services sector in London after Brexit. What does Boris and yourself think will happen to the sector without, in the worst case, access to the EU markets? Isaac, I'm very optimistic about the prospects for the city. What I think's bad for the city is the excessive EU regulation that is coming in, sometimes being excessively overinterpreted by the FCA. I was talking about something like this in my own business just a couple of days ago. And so if we have a sensible, light-touch regulation, then I think we will do much better. And the EU can't really cut off access without stopping free movement of capital. And free movement of capital is one of the principles of the EU. Catherine has sent in a very sensible text and something I thought that was being dealt with. What Catherine says is what I want to hear is an end to the capability for work assessments and retesting every year of mentally ill and people with lifelong physical conditions like motor neuron disease. It is so heartless, the stress that these assessments cause people and the expense of the tests. I thought the government was changing that, so people who had conditions that they knew wouldn't change or would only get worse weren't going to be reassessed. It's right that there should be checks. It's right that payments should be made to people who need them. But when it's known that the condition can only deteriorate, it does seem pointless. But let's go to Charlie in Fife. Hello, Charlie. Whereabouts are you in Fife?
I'm in Culross, or Couros, as we like to pronounce it up here.
Ah, right, excellent.
It's a 500-year-old historic village.
Fantastic. 'Cause
Yeah.
I stood for Parliament in Glenrothes, Central Fife, some years ago, so I've always got an interest in Fife. Anyway, Charlie,
I remember, yes.
What do you want one of the candidates, or either candidate, or both candidates, to say?
Well, I'll try and make this short and sweet, Jacob, if you can let me finish, and then you can maybe reply to what I'm about to say. So basically, up here in Scotland, we obviously, a lot of us up here look at it in a different angle. So in Scotland at the moment, Scotland rejects Labour, Scotland rejects the Tories, Scotland rejects Brexit, Scotland rejects Farage. You see where I'm kind of going here?
Are you a supporter of the SNP by any chance?
I'm a supporter of Scottish independence.
Yeah.
I'm actually a Green supporter, if anything. I mean,
okay.
If I was true to myself, I would be a Green supporter, who are obviously in favour of independence as well. But the fact of the matter is, up in Scotland, the 32 council areas, we hear a lot about constituencies down south and elsewhere, but all 32 council areas in Scotland voted to remain. Over 60% of Scotland voted to remain. So what I would like for the two candidates is for them to be true to themselves and respect the Scottish people and issue a Section 30 order to the Scottish Government to hold a Scottish referendum.
But we had a Scottish... OK. Well, but we did have a Scottish referendum, and I think the then leader of the SNP said it was a once-in-a-generation vote, and a generation surely is a bit longer than 5 years.
If you look back at that interview, I think it was with Andrew Maher, and you'll see that interview, it's all on YouTube to see. He says his opinion as leader. But at the end of the day, people can change their mind. A lot has changed since 2014. A week is a long time in politics, let alone 5 years.
Charlie, I don't begin to deny that Scotland is entitled to have a referendum periodically on independence, but I don't think it can have one every 5 years until you get the answer that you want. There needs to be a reasonable time period between the two, that otherwise you're in a state of perpetual campaigning on independence and not governing Scotland.
Well, Scotland is being governed. Scotland's being governed quite well. Of course, if you listen to the London-based media, you'll hear that Scotland isn't doing too well, but Scotland's actually doing a lot better than the other three nations in the United Kingdom. But at the end of the day, Jacob, how many times is Scotland going to vote for the SNP? They've got a majority in Westminster, including the Greens. They've got a majority in the Scottish Parliament.
But they don't get 50. They don't get 50% of the vote, do they? And they lost support 2015 to 2017, and they lost support in the last Scottish parliamentary elections too. That's why that's why they've gone into coalition with the Greens.
Yeah, 2 seats to loss. But at the end of the day, the proportional voting in the Scottish government, Scottish elections, kind of makes it extremely difficult to win a majority. So for Alex Salmond to win that majority was a remarkable...
Was amazing.
And also for Nicola Sturgeon
I do agree with that.
And away from winning a majority is even more remarkable when you think about it.
The D'Hondt system is a dreadful system. It's not one I support. I prefer first past the post. But on your question of a referendum, I don't think either Boris or Jeremy Hunt will offer that. But thank you for calling. I hope you'll call again. I'm going to go to Kevin in Paignton in Devon. Kevin, what do you want either of the candidates to propose?
Hello, Jacob. Pleasure to speak to you. A few things I'd like Boris to say is, one, that 90% of his cabinet will be true leavers, including people like Esther Maffei, Dominic Raab, Steve Baker, Ian Duncan-Smith, and, of course, yourself as Chancellor. And then an agreement with the Brexit Party if they are forced into a general election by Parliament. I think that would be helpful.
What sort of a deal would you like to see with the Brexit Party?
There's lots of sort of deals talked about. I don't think. I think it could be a four-quarter split. And I think we want to try and avoid that. We've got to stop Jeremy Corbyn getting in, obviously. And I think we should be a little bit more friendly to get some of the votes back to the Brexit Party. And I assure you, my vote won't be coming back. I mean, unfortunately, I voted for Sarah Wollaston last time, which all went pear-shaped, as you know. So
indeed.
We weren't given an option just to vote for anybody else.
I hope you'll come back to us, because I hope by the 31st of October we'll have left the European Union, and that the Conservatives and the Brexiteers can reunite in which case we look very strong in the opinion polls. But thank you for your thoughts. Incidentally, Boris has said that he would expect any member of his cabinet to support leaving without a deal if that were necessary, if a deal couldn't be reached. So I think what you're suggesting is broadly Boris's policy. But let's go to John in Horsham, who's a first-time caller, so very welcome. John, what's the one thing you would like? Evening.
I'm actually echoing the thoughts of your previous caller.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like one of the candidates to come out and say when are they going to speak to the Brexit Party. I mean, at the moment, I've just spoken to the secretary there. Labour Party and the Conservatives are sleepwalking into oblivion. If you have the Brexit Party behind you, Nigel Farage, I mean, surely you must have spoken to your sister about this.
My sister and I speak the whole time. There's very little we disagree on in politics. We just are, I hope, temporarily in different parties. The thing that worries me about this proposal for a deal is that if the Conservatives deliver Brexit on the 31st of October, then it's done and the Brexit Party's objective is achieved. If, on the other hand, we don't, well, the Brexit Party couldn't possibly do a deal with us. So either it's delivered or the Brexit Party has to stand, and I don't see that there's a middle way where we could do a deal.
I mean, the most important thing, surely, is that the Conservatives have a majority in the House.
Indeed.
I mean,
because we can't do anything without a majority.
If they were to speak to the Brexit Party prior to calling an election, they would know, in the event of the Brexit Party getting X number of seats, and the Conservatives beating Labour, which they've got to, surely to God, they've got to beat Conservatives. I mean, the Labour's on 18%.
Indeed. Yes, well, Nigel Farage is a regular broadcaster on LBC, so I suppose we could carry out the negotiations via LBC if this were to happen, but I still don't immediately see how the circumstances that would allow for it to happen could arise. But John, thank you for calling. I hope this was your first call but won't by any means be your last. We've had a tweet from Anne who says, I'd like to hear Boris's view on repealing the ban on grammar schools. We need more choice in education. But you're listening to Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC. It is 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Philip Chrysikos.
Police have drawn their batons as Tommy Robinson supporters, angered by him being found guilty of contempt of court, rushed at the Old Bailey. An aspiring lawyer is starting a 10-year prison sentence after convincing more than 150 children to perform indecent acts on the internet. 8 people behind the UK's largest ever modern slavery ring in the West Midlands have been jailed for between 3 and 11 years each. LBC weather, dry this evening and overnight, a low of 13 degrees.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Andrew Pearce.
After the founder of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson, has been found in contempt of court again. Protests continue outside the Old Bailey. He's going to prison.
Andrew Pearce on LBC.
Don't miss out on Vodafone's double data deal. That's double data on all pay monthly smartphones. Yes, all pay monthly smartphones. Now a huge 30 gig for the price of 15, starting at only £30 a month. Double the selfie sharing, double the playlist pumping, and double the maps mapping. To get double data, go online or in-store today. Hurry, offer ends 9th of July. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Terms and details at vodafone.co.uk/summer.
Ah, sun. Sea. Sangria. And a new boiler from British Gas. You shouldn't have to choose between a boiler and a summer holiday. We're with you. That's why all our new boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit, with no deposit required, and a 5-year British Gas warranty. Plus, you'll get £250 off a new boiler when you book a quote by the 31st of August. Our existing home care customers will get £550 off. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Right now, you can choose tech worth up to £179 when you get BT Superfast Fibre. Play those summer tunes on a new Amazon Echo. Keep them to yourself with a pair of JBL 650 noise-cancelling headphones. Or get out and about with a Fitbit Charge 3. From $31.99 a month on an 18-month contract with a $29.99 setup fee. This offer ends the 11th of July. Search BT Broadband. BT. Be there.
New customers CPI increase each March starting 2020. 91% UK coverage, $44.49 for month 19 pay direct debit, terms apply.
Swimsuit tick, sun cream tick, holiday money, big tick. Right, I'm off to pick up all the holiday bits from M&S.
What about the holiday money?
I'm picking that up from M&S too. They've got a new click and collect travel money service. It's just so easy.
I didn't know M&S did travel money.
Oh, there's a lot you don't know. Like how many outfits I've ordered. M&S Bank's new click and collect travel money service gives you our best exchange rates with preferential rates for M&S cardholders. Order online and collect in store. £250 minimum order. Terms and conditions apply. Search M&S Travel Money.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
At Indeed, we believe a CV is a great way to see an overview of a candidate. But you're not hiring a CV, you're hiring a person. That's why Indeed offers tools that help bridge the gap between a candidate and their CV. Like skill tests, which let you actually see a candidate's abilities in action to make sure they're a good fit for the job. See beyond the CV with Indeed. Experience Indeed for yourself today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting at Indeed.com/redeem. Terms and conditions apply.
Esso are delighted to announce that customers can now collect Nectar points with every fill. So to the Sprog fiver with his hands full of pump number 7, now you've got enough Nectar points to take those little treasures out for pizza. Or you could blow them on an inflatable sumo costume on eBay. If you can't beat them, join them.
Esso Nectar, helping fuel your everyday. Available at participating Esso sites. For more information, visit esso.co.uk.
Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC. Text 84850.
Well, welcome back. We're talking about what people might like to hear from the two Conservative Party candidates. The two are, of course, Boris Johnson, who I am backing, as I can show you, because I have a great poster that says I'm backing Boris, and Jeremy Hunt, who is the other candidate. We're inundated with text today. Maria says, I'd like to hear more about help for youth services, such as support for sports and youth clubs. Dominic Raab had a great idea on this as part of his campaign. And Dave tweets, I'd like to know whether Boris or Jeremy would appoint a primarily pro-Brexit cabinet. But we've got a caller in Sittingbourne. Alison, what do you want to hear from either of these candidates?
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for calling.
No, not a problem. Mine is two-part. One, I would like to see the candidates look at actually proper affordable housing for our young people, because sometimes they just can't get on the housing ladder. And the second point, from the same thing really, is developer contributions through 106 agreements. I find it unbelievable that developers, and I can name one, but I shouldn't, banked over £66,000 per house they built, and their average contribution towards our NHS was £864 per house they built.
And was that for infrastructure for local NHS services?
Yes. So, for instance, I live in Swale, which is Sittingbourne, Sheerness and Faversham. We are supposed to build 13,192 new homes in our local plan. Our NHS CCG have said with that level of growth, they will be £90 million underfunded.
OK, and you'd like to see a contribution from the developers for that?
When they start building houses, if they're banking over £66,000, then they should be paying more than £864, and that's their net profit, not gross. That's what they've banked. And if they can only if all they have to do is make a one-off payment, on average of £864, then we have a problem in our NHS.
That's a really interesting point you're making, and there clearly is a problem with housing and planning policy, because we're not getting the houses built fast enough where we need them, and houses are too expensive for young people to buy. On the other hand, developers seem to be making a huge amount of money from the houses they are building. So that's a very good point, Alison. Thank you very much. Stephen texts to say, I'd like the candidates to clear up the immigration debate. The Leave campaign regularly said that there were too many EU citizens from Europe over here, but now they seem to be saying they can all stay. And in fact, we may need a few more for various jobs. Point is, if too many before referendum, why not after the referendum? And Anna texts, I would like to hear about the housing crisis. So, as with Alison, especially in London, it's been very difficult. Several social houses are bought for a minimum amount of money and then rented at the market value. And the council provides the housing benefit, and this kind of people are getting rich at the cost of the unfortunate that don't have any other chance. Will they consider any solution for this crisis? And I think we simply need to be building more houses. That's the long and the short of it. And we need to build houses in a way that people like and that are beautiful. But let's go to David in Portsmouth. David, what do you want to hear from the candidates?
You, Jacob, first time, right, sport, grammar schools. Back in 2012, I think, when Boris, he was mayor then, I think, wasn't he? Yeah. He and Gove had a right old ding-dong on sport. There was Gove did a fantastic job on secondary schools, certainly from an academic level, but what he did at the time, and it still applies, he destroyed sport in schools, in particular cricket. Now, Boris at the time, so Gove was looking at something like 2 hours a week, which embraced the whole of PE. Boris wanted 2 hours a day. I distinctly remember that. But the whole thing is, yeah, I'd like you. You'd like
more sport in schools, particularly, and this appeals to me greatly, more cricket, not least because Somerset are top of the county championship for the first time ever.
Yeah, they're doing well.
Aren't they? It's very, from a Somerset point of view, it is so exciting because we've never won the county championship, and also England in the semi-finals of the World Cup. So more cricket in schools. I know my 5 sons, well, at least the older ones, would be strongly in favour of that. More sport, more cricket, and less maths. I think they'd be buyers of that one.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening is the sport now is being provided by some good local clubs, if you can get in one, and so on. But it is, the difference between a grammar school and a secondary school in sport is the big change. And the same with private. And he's got to bring up the standard. We've got to get this social mobility that Theresa spoke about, which you never put through at all.
And it's good for people's health as well. And it's probably
God, obesity, everything.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a better way.
Get them off the streets with knives. Give them something to do.
And it's a better way of dealing with the obesity crisis than putting a tax on sugar. Get people to play a bit of cricket. David, I think that's the solution of the day. So thank you very much for your call, and I hope you'll call again. Let's go to James in Berwick-on-Tweed, up in Northumberland. James, hello.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Jacob.
Good evening.
Yeah, actually, I very much agree with that about cricket. I think cricket is part of our unwritten constitution.
Oh, I
Jacob.
so agree with you.
And
yes,
we need to have more people from ordinary backgrounds playing cricket, not just in our private schools, which is where it seems to be going. But actually, what I was going to talk about was the fact that we've got 2 foreign secretaries, and what I would like very much to see is some kind of an olive branch towards Russia. I know you're going to bridle a bit about that, but I think given that whatever you say about Putin, he is going to have a better democratic mandate than either of these two will have. I think it's important to take him respectfully, looking at Russia and seeing where we can find a way forward from the difficulties that we've had in the last few years.
Look, I think we should always try and improve our relations with any country, but I think President Putin is a man it's proved very difficult to deal with, and by invading the sovereign territory of other countries has broken one of the really important fundamentals of international law. So you're quite right. As you were speaking, I was bridling, because I think we need to be so cautious about the way we treat Russia after the way Putin has behaved. But in the longer term, it's in our interest to try and get on with everybody. But thank you. That's a really interesting point to have raised, a good point to have for this evening. Brian tweets, I would like to hear the candidates talk about abolishing student loans for people who train for public service, such as teaching. As a teacher, the interest I'm charged each month is greater than the payment taken. So after 3 years, my student loan has grown out of control. It's absurd and wrong. Brian, I think you make a good point about the interest on student loans, and I think there's quite a mood for looking at that. But let's go to Ellie in Highgate. I think, Ellie, you're going to be our last caller, so thank you for getting in touch. What do you want?
Hi, Jacob. Thanks for taking the call. Much appreciated.
Jacob, I know that Boris Johnson had mentioned stamp duty, taking a good hard look at it. I'm a property developer based in North London, and I've got to be honest with you, I think that in terms of getting the housing market moving again, I think looking at stamp duty and taking a very serious, cold hard look at what George Osborne had done to stamp duty at his time as the Chancellor is extremely important. My business partner likes to say that the housing market is constipated at the moment, and it certainly is. It certainly is. No one's moving. There's pent-up demand. There are people that are looking to downsize, rattling around in big old houses all over North London, South London, and probably the rest of the country that can't sell because stamp duty is too high. People can't trade up. They can't release equity and do other things like give their younger kids a deposit or help with education for their grandkids, or just spend it back in the economy. Similarly, people looking to... Yeah, carry on.
Well, I hope you'll be glad to know I entirely agree with you. I actually written on this on a number of occasions, and that stamp duty has reached the point at which it's counterproductive. It's getting less revenue in, particularly on higher value properties, and the rate is too high, and the London housing market needs the syrup of figs, I think, to get rid of its constipation.
A big dosage, to be honest. A big dosage. And
we're going to have to end on that note because time's up. Leading Britain's conversation at 10 o'clock, it's Nick Abbott. But first, you're very lucky to get Andrew Pearce.
Thank you so much, Jacob. And coming up in the next 3 hours, we'll be talking about knife